Curtis James Jackson III, aka 50 Cent, is definitely one of my all-time favorite rappers, or 50 Cent, according to Chrissy Teigen, who tweeted, "Please love me, 50." 50 Cent. Now, I'm pretty sure most, if not all of you know 50, whether it comes to being a rapper, actor, entrepreneur, businessman. But nowadays, 50's kind of relegated to being a lot of things, whether it comes to being a massive troll and also being quite the shit talker extraordinaire when it comes to social media. Because if you follow this man on Instagram, which I do by the way, you can tell this guy just has a habit for just giving absolutely zero fucks. Which makes it no secret that this man has made a lot of enemies throughout his 20-year career, and it's not just rappers alone, but basically everybody. From P. Diddy, Floyd Mayweather, his baby mama, even his oldest son Marquise, which is pretty insane, especially beefing with your own child. And with this, it pretty much makes 50 the one rapper everybody loves to hate. But if you look at this dude's past, you can tell he's had it rough, whether it comes to losing his mother at a very young age, and also getting infamously shot 9 times, which 50 has referenced it over like 1,000 times. Which is why today I'll be looking back at 50 Cent's biggest beefs. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, this beef started way back in 2008 when newcomer Rick Ross accused 50 of snubbing him at the BET Hip Hop Awards, which 50 strongly denied and claimed that he has no memory of even seeing him there. But even with that, Rick Ross released a track called Mafia Music where he targets 50 by saying,
"I love to pay your bills, can't wait to pay your rent. Baby mama ain't asking for a cent."
After that, 50 gave his response by saying this:
"I'm deciding to fuck your life up. Rick Ross, I'ma fuck your life up. For fun."
After that, 50 kept his word, because then he released another video where he had a sit-down interview with one of Rick Ross's former baby mamas named Tia. She pretty much confessed that Rick Ross's drug kingpin persona was indeed fraudulent and that he actually used to work as a correctional officer, and she pretty much exposed the shit out of Rick Ross. And from there, the beef would escalate to numerous diss tracks, to even 50 releasing funny-ass skits where he pretty much mocked Rick Ross for being a former corrections officer. Hell, there was even at one point where even 50 released a sex tape which had one of Rick Ross's former baby mamas, which stems from the lawsuit with her suing 50 Cent. In this beef, definitely 50 without a doubt won in my eyes, because first and foremost, he exposed Rick Ross as a fraud and also for him being a former corrections officer. And second, 50's diss tracks were far better than Rick Ross's diss tracks, especially when it came to tracks like Tia Told Me and Officer Ricky. There was even at one point where even G-Unit member Lloyd Banks even got involved into the beef, which led to him releasing that vicious diss track Officer Down. It is such a slept on diss record, you guys should go give it a listen. And I know some people will argue that Rick Ross won just because his music career still prevails while 50's declined, which is a good argument, but the fact that 50 exposed Rick Ross for living a fraudulent lifestyle and the fact that he had evidence to prove his point, that just made Ross look super bad, because that can be very damaging to somebody's reputation. And I know somebody will bring up, what about 50 being broke? Well, 50 really wasn't broke if you really think about it, because he filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, because when you do that, that's when you reconstruct your business ventures. If 50 really was to be broke, he would have filed for Chapter 11, because that's when you become in debt and that's when you lose your money. So I feel like that's where people kind of got mixed up with that, because there's a huge difference. And even with the money that 50 got sued for, he regained it back, because once he did, he ended up suing his lawyers for doing a poor job. So honestly, I don't see how 50 lost the lawsuit with that. But bottom line, 50 without a doubt won this beef. After the game was placed in G-Unit by Dr. Dre, the game and 50 Cent started off in really good terms. The two would even work closely when it came to tracks like West Side Story, How We Do, and even the hit single Hate It or Love It, to promote the game's debut album, The Documentary. But it seemed like once the game's buzz got bigger, so did his ego, because after the release of his album, he started doing a bunch of reckless shit. Whether if it came to discrediting 50 for helping him work on the documentary and also denying the fact that he wrote the majority of the songs on the album, and even going at the likes of rappers like Jay-Z and Memphis Bleak, which is a very terrible move, especially for an upcoming artist, because knowing how much of a powerhouse Jay-Z is in the rap game, that's basically a death sentence. But luckily 50 had to smooth things over with Jay. And not only that, 50 also felt like the game was being disloyal to him and G-Unit due to the fact that he wouldn't participate in the feuds with other rappers such as like the Fat Joe, Jadakiss, and even Nas. Instead of doing that, he decided to work with the people that 50 was having problems with at the time. After being fed up with his actions, 50 would dismiss the game from G-Unit and replace him with West Coast rapper Spider Loc, and from there, that's when things got very ugly. Because after that, the two would exchange 100 diss tracks going back and forth, which is pretty insane. With the game's diss tracks, you had 300 bars of Running and 100 bars of Funeral, and with 50's diss tracks, you had Stop Crying and even the comical diss, I'm Not Rich and I'm Still Lying, and the two would continue to go back and forth for years to come. With that, it would cement 50's beef with Game to be one of the most longest standing beefs in hip-hop history. But in 2016, the two MCs would end their 11-year beef, and since then, the two have made peace and are now cool. Now, I would definitely say that the game won like the huge portion of the beef. Why? Because his diss tracks went way harder. Because if you compare his diss tracks to 50 Cent's and G Unit's diss tracks, his definitely went way harder. Especially when it came to 100 Bars The Funeral. Like that's a pretty great ass diss track. Even though I'm a huge 50 fan, I gotta admit, I fuck with that heavy. And I gotta say, the game was definitely like the architect for the downfall of G Unit as a brand. Because after that, people didn't fuck with G Unit the same way they did in the early days. And the fact that the game actually handled that all by himself, going at 50 and G Unit by himself, he really succeeded well at doing that. Because going against a whole crew all by yourself, you probably have like little to zero chance at succeeding at doing that. But luckily the game did that, and that's something I have to give him credit for. Although I still feel like that was a huge dick move of the game betraying 50 and basically discredit everything he did for him, because all 50 was trying to do was help elevate his career. The same thing that Eminem and Dre did the same for 50, and the fact that he basically shit and pissed on what he did for him, that was definitely a huge asshole move on the game's part. But hey, I still gotta give him credit for actually handling the beef by himself. Although I would say that the game overall won the beef, however, I'm gonna say that 50 Cent won the war. Cause really think about it. Just really think about it. Sure, 50's diss tracks weren't as hard as the game's, but at least his were more factual. Cause everybody should know that when it comes to a diss track, fact is what hurts more than just getting lyrically roasted on a diss track. And while sure the game did kill G Unit's buzz, it didn't do much damage to 50's career, because even after the beef was over, 50's career still prevailed. And also, let's not leave out the fact that while the two are going at it back and forth, the game begged to be back in G Unit multiple times. And the fact that he did that, he had to take a serious L for doing that, because first off, he turned his back against the group, the same group he formed a campaign against. The game even went so far to even get fans to sign a petition for him to be back in G Unit, and the fact that he did that, it just made him look very bipolar, and also made it look like he just regret ever going at 50 Cent in G Unit. And come to think about it, it just seemed like the game was under bad influence by Jimmy Hinchman, who happened to be the game's manager at the time of his career. And it just seemed like it was very clear that Jimmy Hinchman pretty much brainwashed the game into beefing with 50 Cent in G Unit just to boost up his sales and make him a bigger artist. And if that's true, I wouldn't be surprised at all, because you know, Jimmy Hinchman's known for being a fucking rat bastard and a snake. But all I'm trying to say is, in my opinion, the game won the battle, but 50 Cent won the war. Well, there is a lot of people that do argue that the game was 50's arch nemesis, but there's no other person that 50 Cent hates more than this guy right here. With the two MCs being hailed from Queens, you couldn't expect this beef to be anything less of how most artists should handle their issues between each other. It's been confirmed that this beef started in 3 ways. One, on Ja Rule's side of the story, is that 50 felt disrespected by him and his crew because they didn't show him enough attention during a video shoot for the track Murder for Life. Second, on 50 Cent's side of the story, is that a friend of his robbed Ja Rule of his chain, which led to Ja accusing 50 for orchestrating the robbery. Or third, is that 50 got jealous once his former mentor, Kenneth Supreme McGriff, started supporting Ja Rule instead of him. Now, whichever side you guys believe, I'll leave that up to you, but there's no denying that this is definitely one of hip-hop's most heavily documented beefs, and pretty much these two have been at each other's throats for over 2 pissing decades. Pretty much they've been beefing since like the origin of Scooby-Doo. After releasing the classic diss track Your Life's on the Line, where he basically called Ja Rule out for being a fake gangster, the two would end up having 2 physical altercations with each other. One in Atlanta, where 50 apparently snuffed Ja Rule for swinging a baseball bat at him, and the second one was in Manhattan at the Hit Factory studio, where 50 got stabbed by one of Ja Rule's affiliates, Black Child, requiring 3 stitches to cover the wound. But when 50 got shot 9 times in May 2000, the beef would slowly die down, and while 50 was recovering, Ja Rule would dominate the Billboard charts with tracks like Ain't It Funny and Always on Time. But as you would expect, that didn't last forever. Once 50 healed up, he then formed the group G Unit along with members Tony Ayo and Lloyd Banks, and would go on to dominate the mixtape circuit, which then would lead to him getting signed to Shady Aftermath and Interscope Records by Eminem and Dr. Dre. But when Ja Rule and Irv Gotti heard about this, they took a huge distaste of the fact that they signed their arch rival, and from there, it basically became Murder Inc. versus the Shady Aftermath and Interscope camp, and pretty much it was an all-out war. With countless diss tracks going back and forth between the two labels, most notably 50 Cent's Back Down, which he dubbed as the true nail in the coffin for Ja Rule, and even to the part where pretty much Eminem mostly got dragged into the beef by Ja, which led to him releasing the diss track Loose Change, where he not only went at M, but also going at his daughter as well, pretty much saying that she would grow up to become a crackhead and a slut. As you'd expect, Eminem was furious, which led to him collaborating with Obi Trice and D12 to release the vicious diss track Haley's Revenge, where they absolutely eviscerated Ja Rule. And after that, Ja's career would slowly take a huge nosedive from that. But even after that, Ja and 50 would take jabs at each other for years to come, which just shows that these two will never stop beefing until one of them are dead. I mean, it's pretty obvious 50 won the beef, because afterwards 50 would go on to become one of the biggest stars in hip-hop. From 2003 to 2007, 50 would go on to have one of the best runs. From revolutionizing the mixtape circuit, to selling millions of records, to starring in his own movie, video game, and even making successful albums as well, from Get Rich or Die Trying, which went on to go diamond, to The Massacre, which sold over 1 million copies in his first week, and even Curtis as well, which also went platinum. And with this, it pretty much solidified 50 Cent's legacy as a pop culture figure. Although, I gotta give Ja his props, he put up a good fight, but I felt like once he involved Eminem in his beef with 50, that's where he really fucked up, especially when he dissed M's daughter Haley. Even though I know it's hip-hop, anything goes, but at the same time, you should never involve somebody's kid in the beef, because that's like definitely a huge cardinal sin, to me at least. And while it did look like his comeback was going well for him in 2004, but then by 2005, he pretty much went from topping the Billboard Hot 100 to just relegated to being an afterthought, and it seemed like his career just never fully recovered after his beef with 50. So with this, pretty much 50 won the beef. Thank y'all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this. Feel free to comment down below to share your thoughts. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for weekly videos. I'm your boy Micah J, and peace.